Well, good evening and welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. I'm your host, Ralph Lillig. I love that intro with my adoring fans, and then right after that, lightning strikes the bush right in front of City Hall, and everything goes up in smoke. I hope you had a good week. We've had an interesting week. I've got a lot to share with you tonight. I'm going to ask you to get a pencil and paper handy because I'm going to make such a deal I'm going to give you. I'm going to make a deal for you. It's called free. I'm going to give you some things that are free, publications, if you want them, and all you'll have to do is send an email to me at Wednesday Night Live Pocatello. You'll see it as it goes across the screen later on. You don't have to send me any money. Just send me an address and the name of the person to whom I'm going to send this, and I'll give you a choice of different things for me to send you, and I'll send them to you free. Out of my own budget, we don't have any sponsors or anything. But I think there are things that are important to you. They're important to our community, and I think it's important that you be aware of these things. Now, a couple of things about today is especially important because today is the anniversary of the passing of the Roe versus Wade travesty by the Supreme Court. As you are well aware, after all these years, 56 million dead babies later, the Supreme Court, the law of the land, said that it was okay to kill babies. And it's gotten worse. And it started out, it was more almost like a contraceptive procedure. Now you can kill babies that are viable. I meant to bring a picture with me tonight. I didn't. I forgot to bring it. I have others for you, not pictures, but just word pictures, graphics. Just to show you how horrendous this is, my wife showed me a picture of a baby that was being ultrasound, and this baby is 6 weeks old, a female baby, 6 weeks old, and she's already starting to produce cells for reproduction. Now, this is not just a piece of wasted flesh. This is a human gift from God baby. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, as well as some other things that have come up. I do want to remind you, as I do every week at this time, please, and it goes hand in glove with the entry-level information tonight, and that is to do with the Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center are people who show compassion and give hope to young women who are pregnant. And these young women, of course, usually include a young man. Oftentimes they're not married, and they need compassion, they need hope. And the Compassion and Hope people give them both, so that they don't go down the street to the so-called Planned Parenthood people and kill the baby. And I can't be any more blunt than that. The major industry of Planned Parenthood is abortion. And last year, there have been over 1 million a year killed for the last 40 years. 56 million. And those figures, I'm told, are pretty accurate. They think it might even be a little higher, but I guess whoever gets these figures can substantiate some 56 million. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I've got a couple of brief videos for you to see that kind of go hand in glove. Before I get to those, and we'll get to those in a minute. Now, you remember last week, I spoke to you briefly about last Sunday was Sanctity Sunday, Sanctity of Life Sunday, and I offered you a publication. I'm going to reiterate that tonight, especially since today is the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, which, by the way, of course, that wasn't her real name. And interestingly, since this decision was made where the baby-killing people used this woman as their guinea pig or their Trojan horse, she has since recanted everything she did. She has become a Christian. She speaks, or she has spoken, I think she's still alive, speaks out against abortion. She's become very pro-life. Very interesting, sad turn of events. Glad that she's become pro-life. Too bad 56 million babies have so far died with this travesty called legalized abortion, or legalized murder, if you will. And I say that from a Christian perspective. Perhaps you, if you're not a Christian, or if you're a liberal progressive, and if you're a postmodernist or whatever, you may not see it as I do, but I look at it as baby murder, infanticide, if you will. So here's the pencil and paper part. Write this down if you would. Manhattan, oh my goodness, let me look at it again. Manhattan Declaration. I should have put my glasses on. ManhattanDeclaration.org. Now, if you go to ManhattanDeclaration.org, they're going to offer you a free book, and I can't give it to you, but they will be happy to. The book is, this is the title, Abortion, the Ultimate Exploitation of Women. And they'll allow you to do an instant download, so you can just run it yourself and have the book immediately. So go to Manhattan Declaration, one word, ManhattanDeclaration.org, and then they will put you up in touch with the folks that you can get a free copy of Abortion, the Ultimate Exploitation of Women. And I think you'll be. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to be glad. It's not like you're looking forward to this wonderful book that you're going to sit up nights reading. It'll probably keep you awake nights, but it's important. It's oh so important. 56 million people. Do you realize that comprises just about the entire population of the western United States? 56 million. California has 38 million. Take the other western states, and we're right around 56 million, pretty close. That's an astonishing number of dead babies through legalized abortion on demand. All right, I have a couple of videos I'd like to share with you. The first one is from the American Family Association. It's entitled Nothing But the Truth, and Ben Johnson of the LifeSite News speaks about abortion. This will take about 6 minutes, so if you would kind of tune in. And Josh, are we good to go on that one? All right, here we are, Ben Johnson.
I don't write and don't publish, but we've written several stories about young children, newborns, and some of them born premature, some of them on time, but all of whom are either left in dumpsters or in trash cans or in some cases, and forgive me, but it happens all too frequently, attempted to be flushed down toilets. And they are discarded with, we think of this and the mind boggles, because they're discarded with such complete and utter disregard, such disdain for their life. But it's becoming more and more frequent. I have never seen such a case or a number of these discarded babies as we have seen in the last few years. Within the last few months, we've seen cases all over the United States, in California, Richmond, Virginia, all over the United States, and in fact all over the world. And Deacon Keith Fournier wrote an excellent article. Keith Fournier, I believe, used to work with Pat Robertson when he had the Christian Coalition about 15, 20 years ago. And Keith Fournier pointed out this is just a revival of an old pagan custom. The old pagan custom is called exposure. In the pagan world, before the advent of Christianity, it was universal. In Greece, in ancient Rome, in ancient Carthage, throughout the ancient pagan world, when a child was born, if the parents didn't want the child, they would simply give birth to the child and then take it out somewhere and leave it alone and allow the child to die either of natural causes or, heaven forbid, for a predator to come and kill the child. This is a revival of that pagan custom. It's simply the exact same mindset. When you begin to lose the reverence, the respect, the value and sanctity of life, then all that's left is a revival of this pagan custom that they can be thrown out like they were yesterday's garbage. And abortion certainly contributes to this. You tell a woman that is your choice up to the 9th month. But what if she delivers early? What if the child is premature? There's a terrible case in Jersey City, New Jersey, that really instigated all of this, which was that a woman gave birth to a premature child. Some 15-year-old children were playing around right before the start of the school year, and they heard something in the trash can, and it turned out, thank God, it was a child who was still alive. And the woman had stuffed tissues in its mouth and nose to try and suffocate it, put it in the trash bag, and threw it away. And they got the superintendent's wife. The child was saved. The child apparently is doing well and gaining weight. He was born about 11 or 12 weeks premature, less than 3 pounds when they got it. Now it's gaining weight. Young baby boy, thank God, he's doing well. But when you see a case like this, if she gave birth 11 weeks early, now we've said, according to our national law, it is your choice up to the 9th month, the day of birth, 10 minutes before birth, if you want to have an abortion, perfectly legal. So she gave birth prematurely. Or shouldn't it still be your choice 5 minutes afterwards? She still doesn't have the ninth month to make a decision. Under our national law, we've said you should have at least 9 months. And so-called ethicist Peter Singer says you should have at least a year or more after the child is born, maybe several years after the child's born, to make this decision. But this is simply a revival of an ancient pagan custom, and this is what you see when Christianity gives way. That reverence for life that Christianity brought with it goes away as well, and the culture of death suddenly sweeps in. The ancient Christian writers wrote about this. There was a writer, and I'll only make one quick citation. It's mentioned in the Didache, it's mentioned by several, but there was one, an ancient writer named Athenagoras, wrote in the year 175 A.D., and he said, we say that those women who use drugs to bring on abortion commit murder. We also teach it's wrong to expose an infant. Those who expose them are guilty of murder. So the ancient Christians saw these two issues as tied together. When Christianity subsides and that respect and reverence for life goes because of abortion, you see children being thrown away in garbage cans. That is the future of our culture as Christianity wanes and subsides if we don't stand up.
We always talk about the economic impact of statism and daddy government and replacing, in essence, our true Father and God. And I think to myself, Ben, as time winds down, but it's something that we are confronting, and what these stories can do is maybe shock us out of this. I hope there's not one more of these instances, but let's wake up, because what it does is it puts what Gosnell did front and center and says, it's not cosmic goo, it's a rip in life. Stop playing games and rationalizing this heinous practice. And the reason we are able to fight the good fight, in the sense of the fight for life, and engage and speak truth and love, and wake people out of their idea, their sleep that this could possibly be in any way anything but killing a baby, is by getting the information out, and you do it brilliantly. U.S. Bureau Chief Ben Johnson, LifeSite News. We will talk to you next week. Ben, thank you for taking the time, and remember this: live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart, and always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. Know that God knows you. He created you. You have a purpose. I am talking to you right now. You're hearing this. You're meant to hear it. You have a purpose. You're awesome. You have many gifts. Know that. God loves you. He knows you, regardless of where you're at.
Well, you can't get any more direct than that. And you see this, I don't recall ever seeing one of these stories in the Idaho State Journal. And I suppose maybe they think that we see them enough elsewhere, and maybe they just don't want to be bothered. Maybe to them it's not news that a high school girl goes to the bathroom, delivers her baby in a toilet, and goes back out and finishes the prom. That was an article I read recently that just, it sickens you to think about it. Now, going back to Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, please call them, 478-HOPE. Call them, see what you can do to help them. They are a small organization. They don't receive, literally, the so-called Planned Parenthood people receive billions of dollars in federal money. Billions, not millions, billions with a B, federal aid to kill babies. Now they call it Planned Parenthood. It's all about choice. Thank you very much. I'm not buying it. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Centers and other groups like them don't have that kind of money. They need your help. Call them, 478-HOPE, and see what you can do. Abortion is not the answer. It's not a good answer to an unwanted child. And there's someone out there that probably wants that child if that young girl can't keep the child. And, I'm not going to beat it to death. There are other people that can speak far more eloquently on this subject than I can. But it is a matter of morality, however you want to do it. Now, I told you if you would contact Manhattan Declaration.org, you could download that book, and you can do it as electronically download it. And that will give you more information on how women have been for the last 40 years, much longer than that. But it's been this whole Planned Parenthood is really nothing more than a cheap exploitation of women, turning women into nothing more than a piece of meat. Sadly, many participate in this willingly, some mistakenly, whatever. But there are people that can help. If you know somebody, if you know a young lady who's gotten herself in trouble, if you know a family who young family, or any family that's struggling with the issue of child, call 478-HOPE. Now we've got another video. It's all along the same lines, but this is more on the world view. This is not just the abortion on demand business has been going on in Europe, in certain parts of Europe, longer than it has here. But they don't seem to care. And I'm sure there are people in Europe who do care, but they don't seem to. Of course, I don't read all of their newspapers, so maybe I'm making a mistaken opinion here. But they seem to have a much different view in the European, the enlightened nations, and yet in the African nations, they're not so hep to get an abortion. The African nations are Christianizing faster than any place in the world, and they don't see abortions necessarily as the answer. They all, unfortunately, many of them have far more children than they can feed. All right, so let's take a look at this. Now, this is testimony regarding the worldview embracing abortion, and it's talking about what it is. Abortion is a sin. And Josh, are we anywhere near on that one there? Okay, so let's take a look at this one. This one, too, is about just under 6 minutes.
Our sign here, we have several pictures explaining important truths relating to the issue of abortion. But one that I have on the opposite sign, so you'd have to approach this if you wanted to read it, which I would encourage all to do. It says that we are attempting to vanquish something far worse than abortion. We are at war with the worldview which makes it acceptable in the first place. If one were to think about it long enough, and the insanity of a society that not only sacrifices its own children, but legalizes it and calls it a good thing, the only way that would be something taking place is if we have rejected completely the teachings and the will of the Son of God. And is back to the Son of God, this Jesus Christ that I called people this morning. Why is that? Why does it matter? Paul tells us in Romans 1, explaining the worldview and what leads to that worldview, what it is that causes that worldview of all who turned away from Christ, of all who have not turned to him. He says in Romans 1, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. You see, there are many in this age, apart from God, who profess themselves to be wise in the things that they recommend, and the beliefs that they hold so dear, and the worldview that controls the way that they think, worldview that includes the evil of abortion. And what are these people doing? They would deny God. They would say perhaps that there is no God, or that God does not see, or that God does not know, or perhaps even believe that God approves of the very thing that he commands not to do, and that is to murder an unborn child. But what can be known about God is plain. He has revealed it. You wake up in the morning, open a window, and look at the sky, a tree, a bird, your own hand, anything, and see the beautiful design of our Father, Creator God. In fact, the truth of the matter is, in some sense, all of us do know God, not all savingly. But God has left himself a testimony in this world. We are all made in his image, which is why abortion is so atrocious, or any murder is, because it is destroying the image of God in a person. It slaughters a human being made after God's own image. So we come with this truth. You say, well, then why do so many people think it's okay, or why do so many people deny this God? The text also told us that. Because people who love their sin, and all of us were there, even those such as myself who by God's grace have trusted Christ. We were all there suppressing the knowledge of God deep down inside of ourselves. Think of it as a jack-in-the-box. You don't want to see Jack, so you push him down into that box even though he's trying to get back out, and you close the lid. And there has to be active force, a latch holding that in place in order to keep that truth suppressed in there, because if that lid were to come open, the jack-in-the-box would spring right out, obvious to all that it was there. Such is the case with the truth of God. And it is my hope by sharing with you that this God, who indeed holds the whole world accountable with the law that he himself has revealed, this God who will save freely and completely any and all who turn in faith to Jesus Christ away from their sin, this God has a wrath. This God is a judge, and he's a perfect one. And judgment may come sooner than we think it is. There is no guarantee that we will not leave this lot today, this parking lot, and turn out here on Hannah Avenue and be struck by a car and killed. And apart from Christ, should that happen, then we will face God's judgment for all the sin that we've loved in our lives. So I would urge you that you would turn from your sin, not just the sin of abortion or contemplating it, be it the person who is walking in as a patient or the person who is prescribing it in this place. But any and all sin God finds horrible, heinous, and evil, and in his perfect purity will not tolerate any of it. But those who trust in Christ are then seen by God as being as perfect as Jesus himself. That is what we need, and that is what I call you to this morning. Please repent and trust in Christ.
Well, the sound wasn't too great on that, but I think you got the picture. I had forgotten that that was a street preacher, so to speak, and I don't know if that was in front of an abortion clinic or if it was just in a parking lot. That wasn't in Pocatello, but at least I don't believe it was. But I thought, here again, it's another reflection on abortion. Now, you may have noticed if you watched the news at all today, at least if you watched Fox News, I don't know if MSNBC would bother to cover it, and if they did, they would make jokes of it, I'm sure. And CNN, I don't know if they covered it, but on Fox News, they did cover a little bit of the pro-life rally at the White House, or at the, where it is by the White House today. Thousands of people, thousands. It was snowing, it was cold. Thousands of people were there in support of life and opposing Roe versus Wade. And do you know what President Obama was doing while they were doing that? Well, I'll tell you. President Obama issued a statement reaffirming a woman's right to choice and his support for Planned Parenthood. So this is the leader of the nation, once again, turning a deaf ear to the pleas of the nation to Mr. President, please let's stop this madness. Let's go in another direction, a direction that does not include killing the unborn. And it is legal. Well, you heard on the first video, it is illegal to allow the child to just die. They don't have to give any resuscitative care to a child that's born prematurely. Now, the girl that the woman that threw one in the dumpster, that's a different thing. And when they do it that way, it's a crime. But it was no crime for her to abort the baby. Isn't that a tragedy? And at what point do you decide when it's okay? Why not wait till the child is 3 years, or let's wait till the child is 2 years old, and they're going through the terrible twos. Remember how terrible twos drive you crazy? The kids are all over the place. Well, why don't we just go ahead and wait and see if they turn out all right, and if you don't like them, kill them. Where's the difference between killing that child in the womb, or if the child is born prematurely or whatever, and setting it aside and letting it die as did the pagans? We're no better than pagans when it comes to that. I mean, really, if we're willing to set the child on an iceberg and put it adrift, how do we differ from the pagans? If we call ourselves Christians by any denomination, I don't care if it's Orthodox or otherwise, if we call ourselves Christians, we have no business killing babies. I didn't mean to editorialize, certainly didn't mean to sermonize, but this is a big thing with me. This is a real big one. And I've been involved in the pro-life thing for many years, and I take it seriously, and I know you do. So, and really this was not meant as a preaching moment, it was really as a reminder that we have allowed those of us who are people of faith, who disagree with abortion on demand, who disagree with Planned Parenthood, as it's termed. We've been praying about this. We've been working against this for many, many years. A lot of work left to do. In the meantime, 56 million babies in this nation. We're not talking about the rest of the world. That's in this nation. It almost you almost have to wonder how they have enough time to do this. But then this fellow they spoke to, this alleged doctor, it was I think it was in Philadelphia, that was recently convicted of multiple murders. What he was doing was actually legal. It was just that he wasn't keeping the records, and he wasn't keeping a sanitary facility, and a number of, I mean, there were, I forget how many things he was found guilty of, 30 or something. But his doing abortions was legal. It's okay to murder babies, but do it under a clean, septic conditions. Do it with a trained nurse there to help you. But then go right ahead and help yourself. All right, now, the next short clip is a very good reason why abortion is not only inhumane and ugly and horrible, just plain stupid. Because we're going to see what happens when life is allowed to continue. And Josh, are we good on that one? This one, I hope it touches you like it did me. This was just under a little under 4 minutes, but listen carefully, and you'll see why I'm showing this.
On a more serious note, but still joyful because everything's okay. But there was this little girl in Indiana whose father started to have chest pains, and he was struggling to breathe. She's 5 years old. The father calls 911 as he's starting to feel like he's in trouble. The minute 911 connects, he can't talk because he's struggling to breathe, and his 5-year-old daughter takes control. Here she is. I'll do it in pieces, but here she is talking through it.
What's wrong?
My dad can't hardly breathe.
Okay, hold on a second, okay?
Okay.
How old are you?
I'm 5 years old.
Okay, what's your name?
Savannah.
Okay, Savannah, hold on. I'm getting them dispatched, okay?
Okay. You need to come real fast.
Okay, Savannah, I have them on the way. Is your daddy still awake?
Yeah.
Okay. Is your front door unlocked, Savannah?
Is the front door unlocked? No.
Okay, Savannah, can you go unlock that front door for me?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we need to... Don't worry, Dad.
Okay. So she stays calm and collected while she's talking to the 911 operator. But what's so adorable is that she's giving, just getting basic information, but she's concerned that she's not really dressed for when the firemen get there.
Can you ask him if this has ever happened before?
Has this ever happened? No. So far, so good. He's still awake.
Hey, ask him if he has any kind of chest pain.
Do you have any chest pain? Yes.
Okay.
This is his first time.
Okay. I got him on the way, so...
Okay. We're in our jammies. And I'm in a TikTok, so I'll have to get dressed.
Okay.
I know what I'm going to wear, but he really needs oxygen real fast. Yes, the door's unlocked.
Okay.
Fantastic. So fantastic. But I love when she keeps saying, so far, so good. She says that several times throughout it, and you know that's probably something her mom always says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I was telling the guys here that when I was about 10 or 11 years old, I started babysitting for a little girl down the street that was about 5 years old. And the first time I babysat for her, I said, okay, it's time to go to bed. And she said, okay, march. And I was like, but I thought, well, that's what her mom says to her. So anyway, the 911 operator wants to make sure that Savannah stays with her father until the ambulance gets there because she still wants to make sure she puts on a different outfit.
Okay.
So you still doing okay, Savannah?
Yeah, he's okay.
Okay.
I'll be in my room and I'll be putting on,
Say, Savannah, I want you to stay there with your daddy, okay?
Okay.
I need you to make sure that he stays awake, so...
Oh, okay. I got that. And we have a dog that's really, small.
So he's friendly?
He's friendly.
Okay.
He kind of barks.
He kind of barks? That's all right, though.
You, come on. Family, it's on the way. Come on, Lulu. Come here.
Is your dad okay still?
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, so good. Stay calm, Dad.
Stay calm.
Every time I see that, I can't help. I light up. Now, that's a baby that was allowed to live. Somebody loved that child enough. The mother loved her own baby enough that they brought that child into the world. Where would Dad be today without that child? That the precious child who was concerned, the little fashionista, she's worried about not being properly dressed to welcome in the fire department. And all the time she's saying, stay calm, Dad, it's okay. So far, so good. But this is a life. 56 million babies never got to this point. This child saved her. And I've seen so many different things involving children where you think, suppose they had aborted that baby. That precious soul would never have come into this world, would never have had the opportunity to do what we just saw. And we see this both seriously and lightly, but in such a beautiful way, because this mother and this father chose to let this child have life. That's what it's all about, is life. Now this is getting us into some other areas here, and deliberately so. We've been talking about, this is the what is it, 41st anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and it's horrendous just thinking about these many years that this has been going on. And that brings us up to date on another issue that has to do with children, and this has to do with your children, our children. My children are grown. My grandchildren are nearly grown. In fact, a couple of them are in college, and one's going off to school, one's in school. But it brings us up to another contemporary issue that we all have to deal with, and this goes right to our children, and that's this new travesty called Common Core. Now, if you watch the crawler there, you'll see my email address, and you don't have to put those dots in there. My wife just showed me yesterday. Don't have to put the dots in there. Just at Wednesday Night Live, Pocatello, gmail.com, at gmail.com. If you send me your name and address, I will send you this little pamphlet. It's called Common Core, A Scheme to Rewrite Education. And scheme is a perfect word for this, the scheme to rewrite education. This is put out by American Opinion magazine. And did I get that right? They changed the name so many years ago. The New American, my goodness, I'm dating myself. The New American magazine. Very well done. You need to know this. Common Core has been accepted here in Idaho. Governor Otter is pushing it. Luna is pushing it. The state education group, board, whatever it is pushing it. You need to know what they're pushing. And basically, I touched on it last week when we were talking about this math problem and how the student was told to draw 18 circles and then figure out how many 18s and 96, whatever that thing was, by counting it off with hash marks. In other words, take off your shoes and count your toes, dummy, because we want everybody to be equally ill-educated. This tells you more, and much better than I can, about why Common Core is such a bad idea and why something like 8 states now that had it have opted out. There were only 4 states originally that didn't opt into it, 4 or 5, and now I understand there are some 8 have looked at it and they said, whoa, what are we doing? And they've opted out of Common Core. Idaho needs to get out of Common Core. School District 25 needs to get out of Common Core. And I know Superintendent Mary Wagner has made it sound like that shining house on the hill. It's not. It's a travesty that our children are going to, they're the ones who are going to suffer. You and I, if you're closer to my age, or somewhere in between the last 30 or 40 years, probably got a pretty good education. Our kids aren't going to get that. They're going to be automatons that are perfect for the state, and it'll be the true 1984. It'll be the real 1984. Educate yourself. It is so important. Mom and Dad, you know this. I don't have to tell you. I just do it because it's part of the program, but you know this already. It's so important for you to be involved in your child's education, to know what the schools are doing. Otherwise, they put things over on you, just like they did last year when they put this little thing in the school policy that says transgender teachers are fine. Your kids have questions, then they'll answer them, and you don't want them answering the way they're going to answer. So anyway, send me a note at, Josh, can we get that crawler going again on there? At Wednesday Night Live, Pocatello, at gmail.com. And you send me your address and your name and address. I will send this to you free of charge. You will, I think you'll be happy that you got it. Now, why are we talking about that? Well, the school's made up with children who weren't aborted, thanks be to God, and now what are we doing with them? Well, we're not doing them any favors if we continue with things like Common Core and other things that are getting in the way. And this is where we come up to a little more recently. Do you remember I guess it's been a month and a half or 2 months ago, we played a video for you of a fellow named Kevin Jennings. And Kevin Jennings, he's no longer in government. There was too much heat brought, even Obama had to back off. But Kevin Jennings was the czar of public education for the whole country. And there was a panel discussion, and it had to do with homosexual kids and what the school curriculum was and why it was as it was and what their ultimate goal was. And as this man pointed out very clearly, their ultimate goal was to capture your child, to teach your child an alternate lifestyle, something that you probably wouldn't agree with. So we have a few things. Let's get kind of caught up to date. I'm going to share these things with you. I think we have enough time to cover some of them. You probably didn't see this. It was on the internet. I don't remember seeing it in any newspaper or anything like that. But this came off the internet. Now this is back in November that I got this. You know, the holidays got us so far behind on so many things. So please bear with me. If you've seen this, you'll know it's a couple months old. This was from a site. It's called LifeSiteNews.com. And this was an article that they put up there on November the 21st. Gay teen activists honored by Obama charged with sex crime against a 14-year-old. And this was by Kristen Anderson. This is out of Phoenix. And let me get my other set of eyes on here, make sure we can see it. This was, excuse me, actually written November 20th, 2013. An openly homosexual teenager who was given a position as an advisor to Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton and honored by President Barack Obama at a White House gay pride dinner has been indicted on more than a dozen counts of sexual misconduct with a minor under the age of 15. Caleb Lillig, now 18, was 17 at the time of the alleged abuse. His alleged victim, a close friend he met on TrevorSpace, a social media site for children and young adults aged 13 to 24 who have an interest in homosexuality, was only 14 at the time. And it sounds kind of like the Gay Straight Alliance clubs and their reading stuff, their reading ground. The younger boy said the sex was consensual, but that he felt pressured to participate. However, Arizona law says no one younger than 15 is capable of giving consent. Remember, this boy was 14. In an unusual twist, Lillig is also considered a victim in the case, since at least some of the charges stem from a three-way sexual encounter the boys had with a 43-year-old Chris Wilson, an openly homosexual Phoenix police officer, who was arrested more than a year ago and is now in jail awaiting trial for his role in the abuse of both children. Although Lillig was a minor at the time, his participation in sex acts with the younger boy violates state law, which says it is a crime for older minors to have sexual contact with children under the age of 15. Lillig rose to national prominence after he and a 35-year-old friend, now what is a 14-year-old boy or 15-year-old boy doing with his 35-year-old friend, Casey Cameron, sent emails to 5,000 Arizona schools in 2011 demanding special protections for gay students and threatening legal action if they failed to bring their policies in line with his demands. The teen then dropped out of high school, got his GED, and traveled to Washington, D.C. to lobby for the Student Non-Discrimination Act. Sound familiar? In 2012, Lillig was given a position in Mayor Stanton's office as a youth and diversity liaison, advising the mayor on matters of policy having to do with youth, particularly gay youth. He was an advocate on loan, meaning his salary was funded by an outside group called 1 in 10. And 1 in 10 is, for lack of a better term, it's a group that facilitates homosexual contact among youths. And I'm really short-circuiting, but it's a recruiting ground for homosexual activities. According to police records, part of his job was to represent the mayor's office at local homosexual protests, which is how he got to know Wilson, who was usually assigned as the officer in charge of policing such events. Pardon me. Wilson met the two boys while serving on the Phoenix Police Department's Community Response Squad as a liaison officer to the homosexual community in 2012. At the time of Wilson's arrest, he had known Lajewski for 3 years, but had only recently met the younger boy when all three attended an event at the Phoenix Art Center. The alleged sex between the three occurred late in 2012 at Lajewski's apartment where the 14-year-old was staying. Pardon me. This seems to happen every week. There's something in here that I react to, and I apologize. Lajewski told investigators that the younger boy's mother wanted them to be together as a couple and would often drop her son off for weeks at a time at his apartment where he lived alone. 14-year-old boy, and mother is dropping this 14-year-old boy off with his other teenager, who was legally an adult by this time, so that they can live together as a couple. That's some mother. That's some beautiful mother. After dinner at Chili's restaurant, during which the 14-year-old reportedly made aggressive sexual overtures toward Wilson, the cop, Wilson drove the boys back to Lajewski's apartment and went inside with them. Eventually, the three ended up in bed together. Initially, investigators saw Lajewski only as a victim in the case, but police records show that Lajewski actively pressured his young friend not to tell anyone about the abuse in order to protect his rising star from being tarnished, even after the younger boy became suicidal. In transcripts taken from police records, it seems clear Lajewski understood their encounter with Wilson was wrong and could get him in trouble. When the younger boy begged Lajewski to go with him to the police, Lajewski told him no. He said he was negotiating with Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius over a possible White House job, and he worried that if anyone found out that he'd been involved in a crime, he'd lose his opportunity. "Can you please come with me?" the boy begged Lajewski via iMessage. "I don't want to do this alone." Lajewski refused. "I cannot do that," he said. "Reports are public record, and I don't need that press, nor does our city." "Minors are not public record," the younger boy protested. Documents can be requested, absolutely," Lajewski replied. "I have a phone call from the Secretary of HHS about me working at the White House," he added. "I'm not going to allow this to get in my way. I don't think you understand that reporting this to the police doesn't only affect Chris Wilson, the cop, it definitely would affect me as well." Later, the younger boy's mother appealed to Lajewski in a phone call, pleading with him to support her son's decision to go to the authorities. "I don't think you know how much he's been holding in. Fear and shame," the woman said of her son, according to transcripts. Of the encounter with Wilson, she told Lajewski her son wants it all to go away, and he regrets it, and he loves you and was confused and scared and has been for weeks. "So, reporting it would help?" Lajewski retorted. "Are you going forward with this or not? Are you going forward with this or not? This is eating me up and stressing me out times 10, so I would like to know." The boy's mother told Lajewski she was worried about his well-being too. She told him that as a minor, if he came forward, his identity would probably be protected and he could get some help. But Lajewski disagreed, stating that because of his work with the mayor's office, it would likely go public with his name attached. This is true love, folks. The mother replied that her hands were tied, knowing what she knew, she would have to report what had happened, or she would risk being charged with child neglect. This is the mother who wanted her 14-year-old child to live with this other boy, the 18-year-old boy, as a couple. And now she worries after dropping her son off for weeks at a time so they could be a couple. "Okay, well, I'm done with this conversation and our relationship," Lajewski told her. "I'm protecting my son and making sure he's healthy and safe," the woman shot back. "You can protect a predator. I'm sad for you." This woman's thinking defies logic. The younger boy's family has sued the Phoenix Police Department for $10 million in damages related to the alleged molestation. Meanwhile, Lajewski has been lying low. Since Wilson's arrest, he has all but withdrawn from homosexual activism. The White House job never materialized, really. So he took a job as a police dispatcher in Arlington, Virginia. He recently passed an exam to enter the police academy, a career goal he developed sometime after meeting Wilson. I wonder what will happen if they do a background check on this guy. Lajewski has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges against him. "At the time these instances were alleged to have occurred, my client was legally a child," his attorney, Gary Lackey, told the Arizona Republic. "These are allegations. He's presumed innocent." Layaski was released without bail and is returned to Arlington. He is on administrative leave from his job at the police department pending the outcome of his trial. Yeah. Now, why do I share that with you? Well, it leads us forward to some other things. Did you see the article or the letter to the editor in today's Idaho State Journal? We'll get to that in a minute. If you did see it, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't see it, let's see if I've got that at hand. I thought I set it aside because I wanted to, there's some other things I wanted to share with you. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Before we get to that, however, I do want to do this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to distract you by going through there. I want to share some other stuff with you. Now, I've offered several different things tonight. If you contact me at our website, email address, whatever the proper term for that is, I will send you, as I told you, the other information. I want you to listen to this, and then I'll tell you why this is important. It's on the heels of this other thing. This is a quote. "The greatest single victory of the gay movement over the past decade has been to shift the debate from behavior to identity, thus forcing opponents into a position where they can be seen as attacking the civil rights of homosexual citizens." And this is from a publication called The Homosexualization of America by homosexual activist Dennis Altman. Now, 1972, not that far off from Roe v. Wade. And this gets a little convoluted. Try to follow, go along with me here to understand what's happening. The abortion mill is one thing to dehumanize God's gift, our children. Homosexuality is another step or part of that whole process to dehumanize mankind by putting out this false copy of God's love for us, that is the act of sex between a man and a woman. For procreative purposes or otherwise. Now there has been, we went through this horrendous thing here in Pocatello with the so-called non-discrimination ordinance, which comes up for a vote in May, and I'm going to keep, and I was going to just kind of try to back off on this for a little while, and then this article, this thing came up in the paper today, and I said, you know what, we can't stop talking about it because people have got to realize that the homosexual community is not going to stop making their demands. They have found a foothold. They're getting, they got national attention. They have a president in the White House who is supporting them. They have governors and senators and all kinds of people of influence who are supporting them. They have supporters that claim to be not homosexual but support the agenda. It's like a juggernaut. It's like a freight train coming at us full tilt, and it's not going to stop. And even though I had hoped to talk about something else for a while, it looks like we're going to be forced back on this issue. Now, here again, Josh, can we get that crawler going? Just to remind people of the address. If you will send me an email with your name and address where you'd like me to send this to you, I will send you several publications. Just tell me which one you want, and here's where you need a pencil and paper handy, as I told you earlier. This one is called the 1972 Gay Rights Platform. And this goes to February of 1972, the National Coalition of Gay Organizations that met at the Armitage Avenue United Methodist Church in Chicago. And this is where the homosexual community, or however it is going to identify itself, decided they were going to attack the non-homosexual world and make themselves relevant, if that's the proper term. You need to read these things. You need to understand what's happening. These are not, this thing here in Pocatello was not an isolated thing. This is going on around the world, but certainly it's coming at us like a B-52 bomber here in the United States. This is the first one. If you're interested in this, send me your information and I'll be happy to send it to you. The 1972 Gay Rights Platform. This is one of the most important things you'll ever read on this issue. Unmasking the Gay Agenda by J. Matt Barber. Unmasking the Gay Agenda by J. Matt Barber. And he goes into here just a few of the demands the homosexual lobby put forth during the 1987 Homosexual March on Washington. And this will give you a better understanding of how and why things are happening as they are. When you turn the channel and every other program has to do with there's at least a homosexual out front, or the program is about homosexuals, and changing the perception of America, changing the perception of the rest of the world. All right? Here's another one. This one is exceedingly important for you to get a better idea of what's going on. This is called the overhauling of straight America. Please write it down. I'll be happy to send you a copy of this. I'll just run it off my computer, send it to you. The Overhauling of Straight America by Marshall Kirk and Erastus Pill. And this goes into the entire an entire format on how the homosexual agenda is going to make sure that you and I come to terms with what they want to do, and we better recognize the rainbow colors, and we better allow for so-called homosexual gay marriage, homosexual marriage, because they are determined to ruin, to destroy the family as we have known it since the day of our coming into the world. They are determined to change it. So now this is another one I'll be happy to send you if you want, if you'd like to have it. It's called the Conservapedia, the encyclopedia you can trust, homosexual couples and domestic violence. And this is very important. You will never, in the local paper, you're not going to read about any domestic violence within the homosexual community. I assure you, it is very, very active. Homosexual domestic violence is a very, very big part of the homosexual lifestyle and their relationships, whatever you want to call it. Now here's another one that you might find to be of interest, and this goes because we've been getting so much information, or misinformation, if you will, about the so-called transgenders. And it's interesting, there is infighting within the homosexual community of transgenders, between those who go all the way and have the complete reverse surgery, if you will, and the males who have their equipment changed so that they look like females. The females, I don't know what they can do. I'm not a doctor, I don't know. But there apparently is acrimony between those who have the operation and go the whole way, and those who do everything except the operation, but are posing, so to speak. Interesting, when you learn about this, you think, holy manoli, talk about confusion. Anyway, this is called Surgical Sex, and is by Paul McHugh from Johns Hopkins Hospital. Surgical Sex, and this publication goes back to November of 2009. I will be happy to send that to you. You'll find it interesting. Now, here's an article that you probably haven't seen. We may have just enough time to read this. Pedophiles want same rights as homosexuals. You remember, I told you some time ago that this whole business with the homosexual non-discrimination agenda or ordinance was only part of an agenda, and this part of this agenda is to open more doors. NAMBLA, North American Boy Love Association, I think that's the proper thing. NAMBLA, these degenerate pedophiles who are now openly lobbying to make it okay for grown men to have sex with little boys, and that it should be accepted by you and me. Don't be so shocked. I was rather, and I learned about this many years ago, but NAMBLA was pretty quiet. They didn't want people to know what they were doing. They didn't want people to know that there were adult men that were preying on children. Now they're trying to make this acceptable, trying to get acceptance for what they're doing and make it legal. Now this is an article, it was from the Northern Colorado Gazette. Pedophiles want same rights as homosexuals, by a fellow named Jack Miner. And says, using the same tactics used by gay rights activists, pedophiles have begun to seek similar status, arguing their desire for children is a sexual orientation, no different than heterosexual or homosexual. Critics of the homosexual lifestyle have long claimed that once it became acceptable to identify homosexuality as simply an alternative lifestyle or sexual orientation, logically nothing would be off limits. Gay advocates have taken offense at such a position, insisting this would never happen. However, psychiatrists are now beginning to advocate redefining pedophilia in the same way homosexuality was redefined several years ago. I have an interesting article that I'll be happy to send you if you ask. Don't have the title close at hand, and I'll try to remember to bring it in next week. And it explains exactly how the American Psychiatric Association changed horses midstream and decided that homosexuality was no longer a deviant sexual desire, that it was no longer abnormal or that it was no longer not right. The American Psychiatric Association, or whatever the title is, back in the 70s decided, they came out with a paper saying it was just another lifestyle, that it was just another norm. Well, you need to know how that happened, because this is not the way it was not a consensus of the whole Psychiatric Association. In fact, it was a very small group of men who were able to ramrod this through by some clever manipulation of time, place, agenda, and all that. But you need to know how it went from one day being abnormal and the next day being acceptable. I'll be happy to send you information on that. Well, I had hoped to get to a lot more, and I can see we're running out of time. Over the next few weeks, I'll be giving you those titles again in case you missed them, because you need to be aware of what's going on, and it helps so much if you understand why it's going on, because let's face it, for most of us it doesn't make any sense. Why all of this, suddenly this great interest in why is it okay to go after our children? And that's what we're talking about. That's what it's all about. All right, here's what started this off. The Boise Weekly was talking about the so-called Add the Words campaign. This is where the homosexuals want to make it so that the sexual identity is, or gender identification, whatever it is okay. Now, apparently over the last weekend, the Add the Words rally went to Boise, and Susan Matsura was there. Now, Susan Matsura is the chairperson, I don't know how she wants to be. She is the chair of the Pocatello Human Rights Advisory Board and one of the developers of the Anti-Discrimination Ordinance. The person who wrote to the paper today was very upset because Susan Matsura was apparently not allowed to speak at this rally, and was offended. Now, depending on what you read and where you read it, the rally consisted of several dozen people, or the local publication would have you think up to 1,000. But people who were there say that it was several dozen to maybe 100. Really stretching it, could be 200. In other words, it didn't get the kind of interest that they would like. And Susan Matsura, who drove the distance from here to there, allegedly, to support the homosexual agenda. And my question would be, did she go there in an official capacity representing the city? Did she use her title as ingress to go in there? Did she say that she represented you and me? If she does, I think the mayor needs to talk to her and maybe remove her from that position. She does not represent this whole community on homosexual issues. She represents a small group, mostly herself. Well, that's it for tonight. That's it for this week. We're going to be back next week, and I will share some more of this with you. I hope you found it enlightening. I hope you didn't you love that little girl? She's so sweet. Hope you found it, something to think about. In the meantime, God bless you and yours. Keep positive. We'll be back next week. See you then. Good night.